is MC Fireside Chats, a weekly show featuring conversations with thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and outdoor hospitality experts who share their insights to help your business succeed. Hosted by Brian Searl, the founder and CEO of Insider Perks, and powered by insights from Modern Campground, the most innovative news source in the industry.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of MC Fireside Chats. My name is Brian Searl with Insider Perks. Super excited to be here for our third week Campground Owners Focused show. And I haven't been here for 2 weeks. We took a week off for the first time in, I think, 2 years. And then my old co-host, Kara, handled the show last week. So I don't even know if I remember how to do this or if I was ever any good with it. But we'll try and see how it works out. So super excited to have some of our recurring guests here. Joe Duemig from At My Community. We've got Whitney Knepp making her return here. You were on one show, Whitney. So we have, I feel like, probably a ton of data to go over for KOA that I'm super excited to talk about. Then we got two special guests, Amy, Camp Standing Pines, and Scott Janney from Magazine Jukebox. We're going to talk about their companies and campgrounds. And then we've got a new recurring guest who's going to join us here, Candice from Staylist. So let's do a few introductions here, right? Like, I think we know Whitney. We'll give you a chance certainly to talk about lots of things KOA. And we know Joe because he's been here on the show. Joe's from At My Community, do some really cool campground apps and stuff. But Amy, do you want to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your business?
Sure. First, thanks for having me. And I should check, can you actually hear me?
We can, yes.
Awesome. My name is Amy Bashor. My husband and I are currently building Standing Pines, which is designed as an upscale RV resort and campground near Hartsville, South Carolina. We plan to open in 2024 with 108 campsites.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We'd love to talk to you about that. We'll dive into that. Scott, you want to give yourself a quick introduction?
Yeah, sure. First, as always, thank you so much for having me on the show. My name is Scott. You said Janney. That's okay. I go by Janney or Janney. There's a long story in that, but most of my life I was called Janney, and then my dad, unfortunately, he was dying of cancer, and we went back to his hometown, and everybody called him Janney. And I asked him, I said, "Why is everybody calling you Janney here?" And he says, "Well, when I went off to the Navy, I didn't like Janney, so I just switched it to Janney." So I've been correcting people my whole life, and really, Janney is probably the correct way of saying it. But yeah, so I'm Scott with Magazine Jukebox. We are a digital entertainment platform for commercial spaces, and specifically here for campgrounds. We provide digital entertainment with a QR code and no downloading of an app, no need to give any personal information. Just enjoy video games, enjoy magazines, or enjoy trivia. So all from one scan. It's really fun.
Awesome. Excited to dive into a little bit more. And honestly, like, I would have chose Janney probably too. It sounds like more eloquent in French.
Right.
So,
Except we're not French. So that's the irony is that
nobody knows that until you start talking past saying what your last name is, right? So
yeah. Well, I gave my wife, when I got married 10 years ago, I said to my wife, I said, "You choose for the rest of our lives. This is what would you prefer?" And she said Janney. And I said, "Well, then I'll just stick to Janney." So that's what yeah.
Candice from Staylist, our new recurring guest. Candice, without selling Staylist, tell us what Staylist is.
Yeah, so Staylist is a property management software, all in one platform. I happen to be the vice president of business development there. So really, we're just out here helping with the industry and kind of, sending knowledge between different platforms.
Well, give us a couple one-liners on why Staylist is a little bit different, right?
Yeah, so Staylist is a little bit different because it is an API software. So very much more tech stacked kind of software that allows you to kind of interface between different areas of things, kind of like an iPhone effect, versus maybe a little bit more of cumbersome kind of softwares that are out there.
Awesome. Well, super excited to have you on the show again. Candice has a big background in marketing, has jumped around from a lot of different companies and been in and out of the industry for a while. So I think she'll have a lot to offer our guests on a regular basis. So do we have anything that we really want to cover here?
Well, Candice also full-time for a while. Don't forget that.
Did she? I didn't know that.
Did I full-time, you said? Oh, yeah, full-time RV? Yeah, I did. When I was at Amazon, I was traveling around the country in my RV.
All right. I didn't know that. So I knew you're at Amazon, but
Yeah.
So, all right, do we have anything big that we want to talk about, guys, before we get into, like, I really would love to dive into the KOA reports, honestly, because I'm sure there's a lot of data we missed. It's been 2 months, right, Whitney?
It has been 2 months since we've been together. So
do we
there's
have
been
anything?
a lot that's come out. So yeah, I could talk, but I want to hear from everybody else too.
Well, we will. We'll cook that, I promise. So, like, let's do, if there's something urgent, let's do, how about we break it apart? Like, because we have 2 reports or 3 that we missed.
I think 2.
All right, so let's start with the earliest one that we missed, and then we'll break it up with, like, talking to Amy and Scott, and then we'll do the next one. Does that sound okay with everybody here? And then anything else that comes up?
Sure.
I mean, data's like, I'm a data freak, so.
Yeah. So I mean, the recent report, which is it's actually coming out tomorrow morning, which is the September report, really looks about how Labor Day happened for camping, which we forecasted correctly. About 73% of campers actually camped over Labor Day, which leisure travelers was only about 13%. I think the big things that came out of this month's report is that the fall and winter are looking to be extremely heavy for camping. We have never seen intent to camp so high, and especially for winter camping. So when we look at winter camping, we're actually seeing from a growth perspective about almost a doubling of intent. So it went from 17% to 32% of people intending to camp this winter. And why that's really important is because we always think about winter about snowbird camping, and this is a very different beast. And we're going to dive into this in later reports just to really understand who this camper is. But what we know is that of the 32% of winter campers, 63% would say this is their first winter camping trip ever. And it's very much correlated to the new camper segment that came into camping during COVID. So it's really exciting to see these new campers kind of look at camping like no one has before. And of those winter campers, they're looking for the top 5 experiences being backcountry camping, a hut or lean-to in that backcountry setting, a hunting trip, staying in an RV, which is great for us, for those of you that have RV parks, and then camping at a location that has an experience attached to it, like a ski resort, a festival, or a sporting event. And why that's really important is it kind of matches a lot of our early research that is all attributing the new camper to camping experiences. They're not necessarily camping like traditional campers who just went to go camping. They're camping as a way to experience other things. And so it's pushing into the fall and winter. They're looking for an experience. And it's really exciting because we should see healthier occupancy across open parks during the winter. And remember, too, that winter in the South is nice. So it's not about all camping in snow, because that's the first question is, how do people camp in the snow?
All right, so 2 questions real quick. Sorry. One is the list that you provided of the order of things. Is that an order, or is that just 5 things they're looking for in general?
That is actually an order. They're very close. They're all in about 30% of people looking to camp. But the highest is backcountry camping, surprisingly. I would say if we were to dig in more, which we will in later months, that backcountry camping is going to be focused in southern areas versus northern areas.
And are you able to, just for the people who maybe glance at a report here and there, or the owners and operators who haven't seen one on a regular basis, how do you guys define camping? Because it's a very, like, some of it's glamping and some of it's backcountry and some of it's hunting and some of it's private campgrounds.
Yep.
How do you define that for your report, or does it change every time?
It does not change, and it actually encompasses all types of camping. So whether that's national forest camping, backcountry camping, cabin camping, glamping, we all consider that camping versus a leisure travel segment, which would be like your hotels, your cruises, your Airbnbs, Now, I know there's some crossover with how people are looking at Airbnb, but that it would be a very minute area of crossover.
Okay, perfect. I'm sorry, somebody was going to say a question, and I think I interrupted them.
Yeah, so is there so far, have you gotten any information in terms of where they're planning on camping, in terms of north or south? Because, it is one thing if it's impacting, they're building more resorts in Florida and Texas, and that's going to have a lot of growth down there. Or if campgrounds in the north have to start thinking about getting heaters and heating their water and being prepared for this type of experience.
Yeah, that's a great question, Joe. So we haven't, that's one of our attempts for the next couple of months is really defining some of this even more into detail by regionality and like expectations of the camper. Well, what I would say is that a lot of it's both. It's yes and. So what we know is that a lot of these traditionally snowbird camps are getting a lot of requests for non-long-term. I just want to come down in RV for a few days or a week. So it's not that traditional snowbirder that's looking to go south. They're just looking to camp. And then we also know, and especially because we do have 500 campgrounds across the United States, that we have never had so many requests at campgrounds to stay open during the winter in northern states. So we're looking to dig in more because what I would say is there is a potential that more and more campgrounds and campers will want to utilize those northern parks than ever before.
Do you think that, and it's a two-part question, right? So is some of this, and I know that it's a loaded question, right? But is some of this related to the weather staying warmer longer in some places? I'm sure it is, right? But I'd just see if you have a sense of how much, or at least at the KOAs. And then is some of it maybe related to people wanting to extend the season? Like in Texas, it was brutally hot in August, and maybe they didn't get to go camping like they normally did?
Well, Brian, I don't know if you have perfectly led into last month's report, which really looked into weather and how weather is affecting camping. Because we have had such major weather events across the United States that hasn't been your traditional temperature or weather events. People had fires in months where they never had fires, hurricanes in areas they didn't expect to have hurricanes. And so what we found out is that a lot of cancellations or a lot of trips were not being booked because of weather events. So people were holding off on booking and waiting till the fall for things like you're talking about, Texas being so hot, Maine being really rainy. There were all these type of things that were happening where people are pushing and pushing their camping trips, but they still intended to camp. What else we found out in that weather analysis is that people will, our campers are saying that as they move into 2024, they are actually going to be booking their vacations in different areas and could potentially be changing their booking patterns. So we saw the most change in areas that have significant fire events that people might not want to camp there anymore, or would be sensitive to waiting way closer to the actual time they want to camp to book. So we might see, and we'll keep watching this from a trend perspective, that campers' booking windows are going to get shorter and shorter. We already saw a little of this year, but that can be attributed to just the concern that I don't know what the weather is going to be like 5 months from now, so I'm not going to book now.
Well, I can definitely understand, especially the fires, right? So my girlfriend's parents have a cabin out in Lake Shuswap, which we've had crazy wildfires up here in BC over the entire year. And we went up there for 2 weeks, and I think maybe the third or fourth day in, the huge fires got within 40 kilometers of us and the whole lake in front of us. You couldn't even see 20 feet in front of you, and it was just terrible. And so I think I understand some of that hesitancy to shorten that booking window to say, well, I just want to make sure there's no crazy fire happening nearby that's not going to ruin my vacation.
And as you know, revenue managers and operators, that's going to be really hard as you get nearer to those dates, feeling like you have to discount. But the reality is a big wave of people might be just watching the weather to see if they want to book. So you could be accidentally discounting to try to raise occupancy, and your big push for reservations hasn't actually come yet. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens this year related to weather. But what I think we can be really excited about is just what we're going to see in the next 4 months from a camping perspective.
That's really tough to forecast as an operator and figure out how to handle that. Like, Candice, do you think there's a software solution for that?
There is software. Okay. Yeah. So as far as like weather patterning and things like that, is that what you're asking around?
Yeah, or just ways like there's a specific problem, right? Is the owner operator might have that, I want a discount because I see my occupancy looks terrible, but like Whitney said, it could be right around the corner.
Yeah. I would say that there's twofold there. I think most of the platforms that are out there are going to be able to help you with maybe, so long as they have pre-established there's a weather specific insurance policy that can be placed out there. I think that would help. And then also working with maybe some of those, one of the questions I was going to have is Staylist, our company, is based out of Knoxville, which was affected in 2016 from the Smoky Mountain fires. And so what we did see is that there was definitely that we don't want to be there. There's a lot of fires happening. There's press around it. But what we did see is that a lot of feeder states around us were starting to get kind of those people coming to them because it was still kind of the distance in between. So I think it's twofold. I think it's about communication, writing up the right comms, in informing the customer, whether that's two-way texting, email blasting, or even just having policies in place, like the opt-in, almost like airports, how you can kind of like opt in for that insurance policy. I think that would put a little like validity behind a customer not completely saying I'm not coming, but kind of
maybe also giving them the insurance of a flexible cancellation policy too, sure. Right? So book and then, if anything happens, you have 48 hours before, 72 hours before to cancel with a $10 or whatever they charge you, right?
Mm-hmm. A credit system.
Another thing with that would be like being a little more flexible on the fly. So once something like that happens, once a weather event happens in your area, if you have the ability to transition to a little more longer term, right? Because what happens then is you have workers coming in. So it's a different type of camper, a different type of experience, but they have to go somewhere and they're traveling in RVs many times. So a lot of those areas have an influx and a need to house people.
Well, I think what's most interesting to me is like we've talked about this in the past, but it's mostly been narrowly related to wildfires or a hurricane in Florida. And it feels like, and maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but it feels like it's more widespread. Hurricanes and wildfires and droughts and, right? But they seem to be almost expanding and affecting disproportionately larger numbers of campground owners that need to pay attention to this, whereas it might have been more narrow, right? Just California, I think it was last year, 2 years ago, they had their crazy wildfires. Well, maybe they always do, but and BC's been bad the last 2 years. So, but it's definitely something that we need to maybe, I'm sure, is KOA working on some education perhaps around this at your conference or?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things that I think from an education standpoint that all campground owners can really talk about is the insurance. How does insurance work with all these weather events that are affecting us? Because I do, to that point, definitely we're feeling like it's happening more. And in not in the same areas that you would always think, like California always has wildfires, but Maine having a hurricane, that doesn't happen as much. So like we're seeing some different states impacted by things we never saw before. The other thing is like an operational emergency plan. So those are becoming really, really important that we're focusing on training our own properties as well as working with our franchisees is when do you have a plan already in place and are your employees already trained on it if a hurricane comes or if an evacuation for a fire happens, not only for your own campground, but how in the local area, campgrounds are perfect places to help in whether it's the servicers. We, even this summer, our West Glacier KOA resort was hosting firefighters on the back of their property. And I think that's an amazing opportunity that our industry can give back during these events, especially when it's not a time to bring in campers. Why not use your facility to help those who are going to make your local area better? So I think the education is more on how to handle the event and how to make sure that your campers are notified. When does it make sense to potentially change a cancellation policy? You want to take care of your people. So if your campground is being evacuated, probably don't want to collect cancellation fees. But, people don't think about that in the moment. And so it's just kind of being prepared.
Well, it's also one of the hardest things as an operator, right? Especially with a seasonal campground. If you take Montana, for example, right? If you're only open for 6 months out of the year, or a Michigan campground, or all of Canada, maybe, except for BC, it's also hard to balance that, right? And the right thing I think most people would say is to waive the cancellation policies. But if you're looking at your pocketbook and saying maybe I'm going to be out for the next 3 to 4 months, at $10 sometimes makes a difference. Yeah. So it's hard.
It is. And I think one of the things that was interesting is like the top 3 reasons for canceling a reservation due to weather was it's too hot. So heat was the number one. At 50% of campers said they would change a reservation or they did change a reservation if it was too hot. Number 2 was too cold. And number 3 was air quality. The very last one was rain. And I thought that was really interesting because campground owners are always talking about people canceling because of rain. And it's not the top one. It's not even in the top 6.
So I wonder how much clarity people provide when they're calling owners to cancel. Do they just say weather and people assume it's rain and maybe it's heat or cold? Or kind of like, you ask people, how did you find me? Google, the internet. Really? Like, it would help me if you were a little bit more specific, right?
Yeah. Or a self-reporting issue.
Yeah.
People think they might not cancel due to rain, and then it's actually raining that week, and you're like, oh, it's not going to be that fun. So
I got a quick question. I didn't know if I'm supposed to jump in or not.
Of course you are, yeah.
So just out of curiosity for KOA, so a lot of our parks that we work with, we do have, of course, weather insurances that are there, but also credit systems. So a lot of people going to some of these parks, me in particular too, I have specific parks that I'm I want to go there. My family wants to go there. Yes, weather will happen. But there's a few parks that will just use credit systems or gift cards that will last throughout the year. Because like Joe said, just being a full-timer, I have my rig, right? So I can just leave, go to a feeder state that's maybe a couple 100 miles away, come right back once that's kind of cleared up in the next couple of weeks. Is that something that you guys have kind of put in practice as well or thought through?
Yeah, so definitely the number one thing that we hope to train not only our own parks, but any of our franchise parks is that no matter what, whether or not, the first line when someone calls to cancel is try to rebook. So move the reservation. Hey, I get it. Your leg is broken. It's raining, whatever. What about 3 weeks from now? Or, how about coming back in another year? Is save the customer and make it almost a win for them is let me get you somewhere else and push this out. But you save that customer and that reservation. So a rebooking strategy is our number one priority with any modification, any cancellation coming in. We don't have a rain check exactly policy. We have a wait list. We have the gift card, which we can do as well. But to your point, the last thing you want to do is actually cancel the reservation. So there's a whole bunch of things you can do before that we would suggest to our parks doing before, if you can, doing it before the cancellation itself.
Because you'd rather have the 60, 75, 200 for a cabin than you would the $10 fee and lose them.
Exactly. And
back and all that.
Exactly.
If I could just chime in. So I'm a camper. My wife and I just purchased a 45-foot fifth wheel. So we're clampers. We take the house with us, as I like to say. But I posted this, and one of the biggest ways that Amazon got ahead of or got mass buy-in early on was taking away the fear of returns, because people didn't want to deal with the returns. And so they made it simple. And what my wife and I have learned is that most of the like KOAs, we like to go to KOAs, assuming that now they can hold us. That's a whole different story now, trying to find campsites that can hold a 45-foot camper. But but what we've found is that most of them are very willing to move the reservation. Like that has not been an issue, and that really helps alleviate a lot of the fear and concern that we have with booking with anyone. In fact, sometimes it's been kind of neat where if we had to cancel due to whatever the circumstance was and we move it, then they let us know like, hey, good news, the new week you booked is actually a lesser week. So you're actually going to still get a refund for, $40 or something like that. So sometimes that works. And then when it goes to a more expensive week, they just lock us in at the rate that we already booked and they're allowing us to rebook for that week. So then we're not paying anything else out of pocket. So I found that experience to be really helpful, and KOAs have been really good about that.
Well, that's
the other side of that, speaking as a guest, it wasn't about a year ago that I was in Florida as a guest in a campground during a hurricane, and I opted to stay. I wanted to stay because I grew up in South Carolina. I'm accustomed to hurricanes as weather events, knew what to do. I was very glad that I did as a guest. It was a great way to experience the campground in a much less crowded way. And then it was a great way to experience some of the attractions in Central Florida when not a lot of other people were around. So I don't know, I almost think as both a guest and an owner, there might be an opportunity to offer some guests who want to be there a different experience than they could get at any other time.
Well, that's fair. I think as long as you're balancing it with safety, right? So that's also a fine line you have to walk. Like you don't want to say like, feel free to stay during the Category 5 hurricane and we'll do fun activities because no one else, right? But yeah. I think you're right. I think you're right. There is definitely when you're talking about too cold or too hot or some of the smaller complaints that don't involve life-threatening disasters, that there for sure is an opportunity there to take that and turn it around to somebody who might be willing to stay, right? Like we have, if you're coming to our park for activities and it's raining outside, well, maybe we're going to move our activities indoors is a very, very simplistic example of that. And just communicating that to the guests. And that might, if they just want to make their kids happy, they can still do that. Just not maybe outside during that first day or whatever, right? I assume that's what you need.
Well, what's funny about this, guys, is that we're leaving Friday and we're heading up to Williamsburg, and right now it's calling for rain and thunderstorms the whole entire weekend. Like we know that's what we're about to go into, and I call it in my world I call it the rainy days, DAZE. It's the rainy days of camping because it kind of puts you in a daze. Like what are we going to do to entertain? And but we still go. Like this is our third camper, and it's funny because if anybody's watching, they're seeing me smile or laugh because every time you guys bring up a problem, I just like, oh, I can relate to that. Oh, I know, I remember that problem, and so our first camper we got was a very small camper, and it was blistering hot. It was probably 106 degrees out, humid here in Virginia where I'm at, and it was and there was no tree shade for any of the campers. It was just miserable. And then my son rubbed lotion in his eye, and his eyes were bloodshot. It was just like everything that could go wrong went wrong. And that immediately made us upgrade to a 2 HVAC, camper. And then we enjoyed that one. But then you talked about it getting too cold and freezing. Been there, done that. Pipes froze. Had to go out and run to Camping World to grab a quick heater hose and hook it up and get water running again. And so all these things I can personally relate to. And our first camping trip. What's funny is our very first camping trip was actually in all rainy weekend. And here we are getting ready to take our new camper to an all rainy weekend. So it's kind of like a rite of passage. Like when we buy a new car, we order a pizza, and now it's like rite of passage is for the new camper. We're going to go into a rainy days.
So this is interesting. We have two dynamics here, right? We have the RV industry who wants to sell parts and new rigs, who wants the weather to be terrible. And then we have private campground owners who want it to be good so they can know there's no cancellations. I don't know how we balance that, but yeah.
I think they complement each other in many ways.
No, they do, for sure, right? And I think like this is interesting to me because this is a newish lesson that I had to learn. Like I've been gone for the last 2 weeks and I went to Iceland. And when I was planning the trip, like September is one of the rainiest months in Iceland, and obviously everything is outdoors there if you've ever looked at that country. And so I was very nervous but like it's going to rain the whole time. And it rained some of the time we were there, and it was really, really windy a lot of the time, especially standing on top of a volcano or whatever, right? But we kind of learned to appreciate the fact that you could still see, like, you're standing next to a waterfall. Who cares if you're wet and it's raining? It's water, right? You're already, right? So I think that's kind of one of the things that it doesn't apply everywhere, but it's really changed my perception on maybe you can still have fun when it's not beautiful sunshine outside all the time. So,
And hopefully you have Magazine Jukebox, right?
I was just gonna say, you guys are all speaking my language. You know, like that's the whole.
All right, go ahead, give us the Magazine Jukebox.
All right, here we go. You want the elevator pitch? I got it. I've been prepping all day for this, so I'm excited. I'm just kidding. It's not an elevator pitch. It's an honest pitch. So, you know, one of the things that we actually, Campgrounds weren't originally on our radar for our company. Really, hotels, resorts, hospitals. You know, we're in over 4,000 locations and growing. And then it was, I went out camping, and here I am using my, you know, I get the perks of the company, and I'm reading People Magazine or Car and Driver, and now we have games and trivia on there, and you know, we're not trying to take away from the outdoor experience. We want people to have the outdoor experience, but one thing that my wife and I do with our kids is we use games as a way to lure our children back into the camper for nighttime, saying, hey, we need to wind down. It's time to start winding down. We need to get showers. We need to, you know, all that stuff. So we use games, and that kind of triggered the idea of bringing games on. And my wife and I, you know, one thing that we really enjoy when we go camping is relaxing on a hammock and just reading a good book, or in this case, magazines. And that's where we're finally like this, you know, deer in headlights kind of moment. And I said, you know, why are we not pitching this to campgrounds across the world, and especially across the country? And my wife said, well, I don't know, why aren't we? She tends to do that, which spars on me, like going into all this R&D. But, you know, so we, so I said, hey, look, you know, this is definitely a product market fit for us. And what we've noticed every time we check into a campsite, they always hand us a piece of paper or something. You know, it's a map of the site, or it's other QR codes that are on there, things that they can do, or maybe it's your Wi-Fi login if there's a Wi-Fi available. And I just said, you know, we're such a simple fit that all we do is we give them a QR code. QR codes are geofenced, so they only work in that facility. And that way people can enjoy entertainment on their phones. They already have their devices. They're not, you know, people are not leaving their homes without their phones. And so then when you check in, you get to enjoy magazines, games, whatever. And for when things are unexpected, could be somebody gets hurt. Like hopefully my mother-in-law is not watching this, but she took a spill on a bike and she was hurt, you know, and so you don't go out and do as much as you would do when you get hurt. And so it really catches for those moments that maybe you are just hanging around the camper and you just want to relax, or there's something you want to read or do. And so it's just been really a perfect fit. And then what was crazy is when I mentioned to our team, I said, hey, we're going to offer two different you know, ways to purchase our product. And they said, okay, what's that? I said, the first one's going to be free, and the other one is going to be a premium, and it gives more perks, of course, but free is free. We don't ask for a credit card. We don't ask for any payment information, and you literally get 4 magazines and 2 games, and it's unlimited use for all your guests. And we geofence it still to your campground and location. Yes, we could geofence the entire campground, so it doesn't matter if it's 5 acres or 500 acres. We can geofence the whole thing. And and it works really, really well. Works great, in fact. And so yeah, we're hoping that more campgrounds will pick us up. Whitney, I'm waiting for a call from you. I think this would be great for KOAs, but yeah, so it's I just think that what we have to offer is a great product. And I don't know if I can share my screen, but if I can share my screen, I can show you guys it, but I don't know if we can on here or not.
Well, we can do that. You can share a link to your website or a presentation in the chat, but I just have 2
Awesome.
questions for you real quick. Number one is, how does this benefit campground owners? In other words, is there revenue? Obviously it benefits them from having an entertainment aspect, right?
Yeah.
But how does is there a revenue share? Is there something specific to their park? And then 2, convince Joe that he needs to use this for his kids to get him back to the camper, and I'll be a believer.
Yeah. So yeah. Well, with all your kids, Joe, I don't know what entertainment they like, but I appreciate the challenge here, Brian. But yeah, so you know, first and foremost is on our free. So we call it our free program. there's no revenue share because we're covering all the expense. We're covering all the server costs and all that. So there's not going to be any rev share in the free side. But on the premium side, which is only $40 a month, and we offer it to campgrounds for 50% off for the whole first year. So it's only $20 a month, and that's for the entire site, unlimited use. But they get 2 ad placements on our platform. So when you first scan, an ad placement will pop up, and it will be able to say, hey, sign up for our newsletter, or it will say, go to our Google page and leave us a review. And so you're really catching people in a very happy moment. You're also catching them on their phone because they're getting offered some sort of entertainment while, it could be a rainy day, or it could be, really blistering hot or super cold, who knows? But so they get the 2 ad placements that can help drive revenue. And then we place ads throughout the remaining, and there's certainly opportunity for rev share. We've always had this saying in our company, which is it's always great to get to the top, but it's really lonely if you go by yourself. So you might as well bring everybody with you. So we don't have a desire to have a 90% margin here. We're totally okay with the 10% margin. But
I really want to have Joe ask you questions, because he's been developing a really nice campground app for a while, which is not the same as what you're doing, but has a few crossovers. I think Joe would agree. So Joe, I'd love to have you just ask questions and see.
Well, actually, I thought originally we might. So you're not actually providing any. You said that Campground hands out a lot of information. Are you providing that information for them as well, or is it you're providing an entertainment platform for them to go and see People Magazine and Time Magazine, not necessarily the campground map?
Great question. So we actually offer the entertainment. So we actually, if you have an app, for example, if a campground has a specific app, we actually integrate into their app. So they don't actually have to offer the QR code, but we still encourage offering the QR code, especially if they have like a laundromat. Great place to put us, because people don't want to leave their laundry and walk away. So it gives a source of entertainment right there on their phone. And there is a true thing, and Joe, I understand apps. I have plenty of them on my phone. But there is a true thing of app fatigue, and there's a lot of people that don't want to download another app, and so we help also curtail to that. But we certainly integrate, and as far as the offering, absolutely, our QR code, a QR code is really just a UPC code essentially. It's just giving you a direction, and so that they could have their own QR code that leads them to their website. A campsite can have it lead to their website. And then we can be placed on their website, and again, it will only work, while they're in that facility. So there's many different ways. We're in quite a few like hospitals, and hospitals use us a lot, and they help us with like intake, and because the patient experience is so important, and so we help them with intake forms, and that they can actually process through the intake form or a check-in and things like that. So, and then what's also neat is sometimes people check in after hours where there's no one there to welcome you in, and you're just picking up your packet. And it allows it to easily be placed there, and it's a very simple scan and enjoy.
So,
hey Scott, I have a couple questions, if that's okay.
Yeah. Whoever, anybody and everybody.
Go ahead, Amy.
So I'm thinking about this from a campground owner perspective, right?
Sure.
I can totally get. I did just a quick scan of your website, and I get this concept of a coffee house wall, basically, right?
Yeah. You read my story.
It's a great story, of course.
Well, that's our fault, because we didn't talk to Amy yet, so she was probably bored. I'm sorry, Amy. We're going to give you time in a second, I promise.
No worries. I'm actually curious about something for Scott. So, having stayed at a lot of different campgrounds, some have great Wi-Fi, but that's rare.
Yep.
Mostly, internet is a challenge when camping.
Sure.
When I think about this and I think about QR codes, I think about a lot of places that I've been where it might have been great to scan and learn, but my phone wouldn't connect. Is there a plan to deal with that, or kind of what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, no different than an app in that situation. If there's no internet, there's no internet. We don't have a way around that. They don't need a Wi-Fi to connect. They just need internet access. So if they have internet on their phone or from their camper, if they have Starlink or something like that, it absolutely will work off of all those. And I do understand that. I've been in campsites where there's limited to no internet access, and I will say that, Whitney, you could probably chime in more on this from a data side, but, more and more people are, are like me, business professionals who are trying, camping is our easiest way to really have a little mini vacation and still get work done. So providing a Wi-Fi in a campground, I'm sure, is top of the list of priorities for most campgrounds because they want that. But I also know that Starlink is doing a fantastic job of offering, internet access to a lot of people, and campers now are coming more equipped with Wi-Fi. And here's to all you campers out there: if you have a Wi-Fi that works on your camper, just share it. Be kind and share it. If there's no Wi-Fi, like, what is it going to matter? But I say that, use security. I'm not a security guy, so whatever. But yeah, there's always going to be that issue. But one of the nice things about us too is when it comes down to the physical offering of a magazine, the problem has always been is, let's say I like Car and Driver, and Brian, you like Car and Driver, and there's only one Car and Driver magazine. You get there before me, and I can't. Then Car and Driver's out. I can't access it. But with our platform, you could have 100 people reading Car and Driver. It's always up to date. You don't have to worry about someone stealing the physical magazine. It's just, and also from an eco standpoint, it's very eco-friendly because we are zero emissions. We don't cut down trees, and works really, really well.
So once they scan your QR code, then are they prompted and required to give you location access then?
Yeah, so great question. So yes, we do ask for their geofence. We do want to verify their location because that's who's paying for or has requested our service. So if we didn't do that, then someone would take a picture of the QR code, throw it on the internet, and guess what? Whitney, Brian, Candice, Amy, Joe, everybody would have access to People Magazine. And guess who would be calling me? Meredith would be calling me and saying, hey, you're not supposed to be giving away our magazine to everybody in the world for free. So yeah, so we do have to geofence it. And also for those who do pay for the service, think about it, they're not paying for that service for their, the next over maybe KOA or campsite. They're not paying for them, they're paying for their site. So it shouldn't be in that case. But for those who don't want to give their access, which that happens, we understand that, we immediately prompt a code that is unimpeded, and it allows us, they have to give a little bit of information though, like they may have to give like at least where they're at and that code, and we recycle that code every week anyway. So that's how we protect that it's not just a code that's being spit out. So they may get the code one time, but they have to come back there to scan the code in order to get that unimpeded code. So we understand the limitations there on both. Not everybody likes to give their location.
All right, I want to talk to Amy and give her some time. But before that, I have one question. I want to play devil's advocate with you, right?
Yeah.
Why do I care about magazines anymore? Not just print, but like if I can go to caranddriver.com and see way more articles on there than why?
I love that question. So first of all, so most of the offerings that we have on magazines have restricted paywalls on all of them. The content that we provide is not something that's readily accessible. Now, there are certainly people out there that pay for magazine apps because they're magazine junkies, perhaps like me, or those who pay for Audible books and things like that. When it comes to finding the content on the internet, there are definitely snippets, but the average consumer has not read a digital magazine cover to cover. In fact, the last stat that we saw was like 85% of most have not read a cover to cover magazine digitally. But the other component to that too is that it only meets the need of one person, and it doesn't meet the need of the whole family. So you, again, may want to go and find something with Car and Driver. You have to get over paywalls, which they have paywalls everywhere. And so then good luck trying to get through those to find the content. And then on top of that, you have to, then you're asking your wife or your kids, your girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, they need to go find it as well, when everyone can just essentially scan one singular code and it works for all devices and they can all enjoy it. And also, I'll tap into this. Our stats stand for itself. Last year we had 9,100 users, and by midway through this year we've had 35,000 users, and we're expected to hit 100,000 users by the end of this year, and we're expected to hit almost 1 million users by the end of next year.
All right, I feel like I could be tougher on you, but I want to talk to Amy.
That's okay. I like a good match.
No, it's all right. Like I'm not saying I'm a disbeliever. I'm just playing devil's advocate. That's all, right?
All
right, but let's talk to Amy. Amy, tell us what you're building.
So we're building a campground. I'm curious. Just I almost want to ask for a show of hands. I know that Scott has an RV. Are all the rest of y'all RVers as well?
No, I don't make enough money to afford an RV.
That is a lot.
I mean, it's so sad. We can always rent you one.
Do you not have one for real?
There you
Brian?
go. Good job,
Oh, I
Amy.
don't
like
have an
that.
RV. I don't have an RV.
That's wild. I have one.
RVs are so much fun. We picked up our first one several years ago when our little girl was small, and some of our best family memories are camping with her, watching all the silly fun things that she did. Kids are a trip. So after a couple decades of corporate life, my husband and I wanted to do something different. I'm originally from South Carolina, wanted to come back closer to home. So we had the thought of, like many others do, buying a campground. This was a couple years back. There were not a lot of great campgrounds on the market at that point, and those that were seemed to go very quickly. So we thought about building one instead. We started looking for land, found a place here about 15 minutes from Hartsville. So we're about 35 minutes off of I-95, 35 minutes off of I-20. We bought almost 90 acres. And Whitney, I'm not sure if you would have known him, but Homer Staves with Staves Consulting did our initial.
I know Homer too.
Yeah.
Everybody knows Homer.
Homer is awesome. They did our initial feasibility study and design. So Scott, you're 100% fit in any of our sites. The smallest are 50 feet long. So
Nice.
We're really trying to design for the park of the future. We got a good mix of pull through, back in cabins, glamping, and even some tent spots, because I do think that in this area, tent camping is going to be popular. I was really particularly interested at the top of the segment, some of the reporting on experiences, because that's kind of a key bet for Standing Pines. We are spending more money than I want to think about in developing really nice amenities for our guests. Everything from a resort-style beach entry pool with bubblers and fountains and wet suntan loungers to the pond and the fishing. And I think before this thing is open, my husband's going to convince me to go ahead and put the pickleball court in somewhere close to the miniature golf. So
I love it. I love it.
Hopefully, you're right. It's all about the experiences, and kind of the key learning we've had in the last several months is really being a part of our community. The comment was earlier that the KO Park that allowed firefighters to stay on property while they were there to help really kind of that hits home with me, because I think that's an important part of being part of the community. So we started doing some conversations with some folks around town. 3 parcels behind us, 5-minute drive, there's an organization that does horse and dog rescues. So they offer trail rides and horseback riding lessons to the public for like $35 an hour. So we won't have horses here, but we'll have a good connection to guests who might want to go and for the first time ever, book a ride on a horse or just go pet one, because a lot of kids have not done that. Then Black Creek Wildlife Rescue is nearby as well. And I believe that they may be willing to work with us to bring some animal ambassadors on site. So I truly hope that the reporting is right and it's all about the experiences for guests, because that's kind of our key bet.
Well, it is all about the experiences, right? It's not even, you don't even need reporting for that. And the thing is that the experience is such, like the word experience is so loaded. It goes from here's a warm chocolate chip cookie at check-in to a free coupon for an ice cream cone for your kid, all the way up to like really luxurious glamping experiences, right? That people charge $500, $600, $700 a night for. So experience is a loaded word, but that's always what. Does anybody disagree with me? I think that's always what it's been about. It's just different at different places.
Yeah.
The customer experience is a lot of that took a back seat, and I think what's interesting about COVID is that COVID taught us a couple of things. One is we needed Mother Nature more than ever. We learned that Mother Nature was super important. We've always known that, but made it come. And the other one is a sense of community. And for us, like with camping, it was just so important for us to be able to get out and go camping even during that time. And it really hooked us. And I'm just thankful to have campsites, Amy, that me and my family and my kids can go to, and that they, and what I've noticed about campsites is I like amenities, but I like amenities for me and my wife and our camper, like at our site. But I want amenities for my kids, because that's really, we're there to get them to wind out and be exhausted. That is our goal. by 6 o'clock, I want them ready to, pass out by 7. So that way my wife and I can go out and have a cup of wine or a glass of wine and just relax by the campsite, listening to some music and not worried about the kids anymore. Like that's like our 3-hour window, 7 to 10. That's us, but so letting the kids be able to, wind out is super important.
Joe, do you agree? Is it 7 to 10 for you too? Or is it 8 to 10? Or
we put them to bed at 8 and we work until midnight. So close to the same.
Yeah. Come on.
Oh, man, no rest. I'm the exact same. I think a lot of women make the decisions too on the travel planning. And I know that one of the biggest things for me specifically, especially with my family, is just that memory base. So as long as I know it's clean, I'm making memories with my family. It's something I can look back on. I think that's when you're going to get that loyalty really built in and that branding. So exactly what you're kind of going after, also putting in that element of that really kind of like philanthropic kind of feel to it too. I think you're going to attract like the right people. And that's what's really cool about the industry is that every park is a little bit different and it's intentionally made to, attract that person. So I think you're on the right path.
Yes, Candice, it's funny you should bring that phrase up. The tagline that we're thinking about trademarking is discover memories together.
Amazing.
So,
yeah. That's what it is. I mean, women are the primary purchasers and the decision makers. They're constantly researching. We enjoy that process of it. Not to say it's always women, but for the most part, we're kind of over there making those little bookings and stuff. And I think if you just really example whatever it is that you're trying to take in there, you're going to have that loyalty, that recurring, even maybe generational review. So that's where it goes.
Candice, that's 100% correct. I mean, my wife, she just sends me, she'll be like, hey, by the way, we're going camping this weekend. Be like, all right, when do you need me to go grab the camper out of storage?
Yeah.
So that's
get up, guys, de-winterize it. Let's go have fun, or the kids. I don't care if it's rainy. Just playing Scrabble in that park might be
100%. Well, we got a toy hauler now finally. So now we have like the little garage to play in. So I'm trying to figure out how I can make like a half pipe for skateboards back there or something, like really just destroy things. That's what me and my boys do.
Good. So you're looking for a campground with a pump track. That would be fun for them to play with.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool.
There's we've been to some great sites, and we've been to some rough sites, and like Candice said, clean. Oh my gosh, way to hit the nail on the head there. Clean, so important. Spider webs, one of the worst things, like when you're using the amenities, and all of a sudden you're using the bathroom, you're taking a shower, and up in the corner is this massive spider, and you're just like, all right, is it going to jump at me? What's going on? The crazy thing is my wife, she would laugh at me, but I used to own a pest control company back in the day, and I hate bugs and rodents. And it's always funny because she's just like, hey, there's a bug. I'm like, you kill it. I don't want to mess with it. So she's, so clean is so important. Absolutely.
In this conversation, one of the things I've actually never thought of and never seen is a site being advertised as like a kid-friendly site, one wrapped around a playground, which that kind of could work as one of your site types. Because that's where we prefer. I mean, with 6 children, if we can just be at the camper and let them play on the playground right there, that's awesome for us.
Near the playground, near the playground, or wrapped around the entire playground. Your kid has to defend the playground from everyone else.
He's right though. That's
so Joe, probably if you had a couple friends going with you, one of the site types you'd enjoy are quad sites.
Yeah, quads are
we
buddies.
have 3 others who go with you, and then you've got the whole little private green space.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have some things for kids to do there, but also that's, I don't know, one of the things that really appeals to me about campgrounds is it feels like overall as a country we've lost some of the safe spaces for kids to be kids. And so the thought of contributing and giving back a place where you can bring your family can have fun and it's safe, that's truly appealing.
But only if you rent the site that's wrapped around the playground. You've got to be
right.
Otherwise, you don't. Like little Johnny have access to the playground.
One of the other kind of, again, going on the same thing, one of the amenities that would always move someone to the top of the list just because my children absolutely love it is the lazy rivers. Over a pool any day. That's what they just love. And anytime, we've probably been to not that many, 4 or 5 different campgrounds with lazy rivers, and they'll spend their entire time in there. So
phase 2.
You know what's interesting? I saw this happen. It was up at Jellystone, up in called the Chickateague Island. If you guys haven't read the book of the Chickateague Ponies or something, it's a really neat read. But what they did is that they encouraged a water park company to build next to their campsite. And then they partnered with giving gifts. So Amy, as you're building that out, you may not have to fork out the bill. Talk to a water park company that may want to build next to you, and then you just partner up. That way you don't have to take on that liability either.
One of the criteria on our list for where we were going to be was that we have to be within 15 minutes of a family attraction. So we're within 15 minutes of Neptune Island Water Park in Darlington County.
Cool.
So they have a really nice lazy river. I spent a lot of time floating on that river this summer.
You're speaking my language. I'm ready to go. Here we go. Where can I find a lazy river?
One other thing too that really, I guess, just for me, like when I'm traveling, is I really like having a camp store. I know that sounds ridiculous, but having just like firewood, ice, like just knowing that it's right there, there is something special about being able to give the kids like a couple of dollars and just that kind of old country store feel. That's something that's very nostalgic too, that tends to bring in a good amount of income, depending on how you're inventorying things. But that's just definitely something to kind of keep in mind, even if it's very limited. It just kind of has that little memory touch to it.
It also
bring back the
adults to be lazy too, right? So that's a plus for
I want to go in there and get a soda. Yeah.
Bring back the. I was just say, bring back the quarter bubble gum machines, and the kids throw a quarter in there and twist, and a piece of bubble gum comes out. Like, bring those back. I do that. There's a store that was called Easier Times, I think it was, and I was like, man, if I owned a campsite, I would just mirror what they're doing, because they just bring back everything from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and my kids, they love that stuff more than this modern day stuff. So it's like, I think it's a cool idea.
Camping is nostalgic. I haven't convinced my husband yet, but I'm still trying for one of those like whiskey barrel sit down and stare down at Pac-Man games. You remember, like we're in Pizza Hut when we were kids? Like, I totally think we should get one of those and put it in the Welcome Center by the snack bar.
Kids love arcades. Kids love arcades. Like, my kids just love going and playing arcades.
But you want them to do that while they're camping is the thing, right? So this is
I want them to go do everything. That's we pick out like, hey, Thursday night is arcade night. Friday night is movie on the big screen outside. Saturday is go ride horses. Sunday, like, we always try to pick out something big or something fun, and you don't sit. You're at an arcade for maybe an hour. What are you gonna do with the other 18 hours of the day that outside? So.
Joe and Scott, I was just kind of thinking as y'all were talking earlier about that magic hour of getting the kids to bed, right? So we are working on, and in fact should publish later this year, the first illustrated storybook for Standing Pines. It's Rascal Raccoon Takes Responsibility. So those will be available in the camp store, but it's 100% a illustrated storybook that's designed for parents to have fun reading to their kids, because that's one of the things that my husband was a designated reader most of the time when my daughter was little. And now she reads to him a lot of nights. So it's really, really a cool family experience to just.
All right, I think
really great.
We're running out of time here. We have a couple minutes left. I think the easiest thing from what I'm hearing is the retro entertainment for the kids, right? But you could just build like a machine that drops like one of the, remember the gumballs that used to go around the thing and the kids would have to watch it for like a minute and a half before it would actually come at the end? If we just build one of those that goes through the entire campground, so it takes them like 3 days to follow it, and then it keeps you busy, it gives the adults time, but then at night it'll just drop in through the skylight of the RV right in their bed, so they're inside and ready to go to sleep. And then it just solves all the problems.
Yeah.
Amy and Scott, you're new to these thoughts. Candice, welcome back.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I think that would work. I think it would work. Amy, can we build that?
Can we? Yes. Should we?
No.
You always shoot down my ideas. All right. Any final thoughts before we go?
No, just congratulations on the park and the businesses. Yeah, great success there.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having us on, and look forward to working with many campsites.
Where can they see more about Magazine Jukebox?
Magazinejukebox.com, needmagazines.com. You can find us on all social channels. I'm very active on LinkedIn. People can find me /ScottMJB. I do always encourage people to connect with me on LinkedIn. And other than that, you'd probably find us in local car dealerships, hospitals, and soon campgrounds.
Amy, where can they learn more about what you have going on? I assume it's campstandingpines.com.
It is, and I welcome everyone. And the Facebook page is growing. We will not open until 2024, but that page is growing rapidly and is a great place to learn about all the things to do in the local area. So it's more than just the campground.
Awesome.
Again, thank you so much for inviting.
Joe and Candice, real quick, where can they learn more about Staylist and Out My Community?
Okay, yeah. So with Staylist, the quickest way to get a hold of us is at staylist.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn, Candice McNamara. Just straight up look me up there. But yeah, anytime you guys have questions around anything with the industry, we're always happy to help.
And for myself, at mycommunity.com, and we'll be at all of the upcoming shows, ARVIC in particular, coming up in November. So.
Are you going to the glamping show, Joe?
I'm going to glamping.
Joe, I will see you there. We're at glamping as well, so stop by.
Awesome.
Is that because I told you to be at glamping, Candice?
It's 100% yes. That, yep.
I want 10% of all sales that happen during the glamping.
You will meet my new COO too. We'll bring you some merch. So definitely stop by.
Well, thank you guys. I appreciate you for another excellent episode here of MC Fireside Chats. Had some great conversations. We will see you next week for our RV industry focus show. And take care, guys. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks.
For joining us for this episode of MC Fireside Chats with your host, Brian Searl. Have a suggestion for a show idea? Want your campground or company in a future episode? Email us at hello@moderncampground.com. Get your daily dose of news from moderncampground.com. And be sure to join us next week for more insights into the fascinating world of outdoor hospitality.